Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving back into some malicious compliance stories. You spend years carrying everything alone. The house, a sick father, hospitals, bills. Your sister disappears for years, then your father dies and she doesn't even show up to say goodbye. But the very next day, she shows up with a perfect smile and says, "I want the bigger share of the inheritance or I'll sue you." Karen skipped Dad's funeral, then showed up for $500,000. My sister disappeared for 7 years after Mom died. She didn't visit Dad when he got cancer, but she showed up the day after the funeral asking for $500,000. My mom died 7 years ago. She was only 58, but her heart had been weak since she was young. That morning, she just didn't wake up. The doctor said heart failure, short and cold, like it was a checkbox on a form. After that, Dad broke. Not in the way it happens in movies, no public crying, no screaming into a pillow. He just became a shadow of himself. The man who used to joke at the table and take me fishing turned into a silent person who could sit for hours staring at a TV that wasn't even on. My sister and I still lived at home back then. Her name was Karen. And yes, the name fit perfectly with what happened next. In the first months after Mom died, I tried to carry everything. Work, the house, Dad, funeral, paperwork, bills. Karen lasted maybe 6 months. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and saw her standing next to a suitcase. "Where are you going?" I asked. She didn't even look up, just zipped it closed. "I can't live like this, Brian. I can't watch him." She waved toward the living room where Dad sat in his chair. "Watch him rot like that. It's making me sick. I can't breathe." "That's Dad," I said. "He can't breathe either. It's harder for him." Karen made a face like I'd insulted her. "I have to think about my own life. I'm moving. There's a job in another city, and I need a fresh start." "And Dad?" She shrugged. "You're stronger. You'll handle it." And she left. At first, she'd text once a month. "How is he? Everything okay? Tell him hi." Then once every 6 months, and then she went completely silent, like we stopped existing. I took care of Dad alone. I cooked, pushed him to go outside, arranged a therapist, drove him to lab work, fought with insurance when they didn't want to cover medications. Years passed. And somehow it got a little better. Dad started joking sometimes. One day I came home and found him sitting with his stamp album. Yes, that same collection, carefully turning pages with tweezers like a jeweler. "Dad, you haven't taken that out in a long time," I said. He gave a weak smile. "Your mother always said I looked at these stamps like they were a treasure map." "And was she right?" "Maybe." He brushed a finger along the page without touching the stamps. "But it's not about money, it's memory, history." I didn't know then that this history would become the reason for a war. 2 years ago, Dad started coughing. At first we thought it was a cold, then bronchitis, then he lost weight fast. One morning he couldn't climb the stairs without stopping halfway and grabbing the railing. "We're going to the doctor," I said. He looked at me like I was asking him to confess to a crime. "No, it'll pass." It didn't. Lung cancer, late stage. I remember sitting in the oncologist office while the doctor spoke in a calm voice about treatment options, prognosis, and quality of life. Dad stared at the floor. I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palm. Then life became a routine. Work, hospital, pharmacy, home. I picked up extra shifts to pay for a nurse when I couldn't be there. I ate on the run, slept in fragments. Karen? Karen found out. I texted her. Her reply came 3 days later. "Oh, that's awful. I don't know what to say. Stay strong. I can't come home right now. We have our own problems." Her own problems, always. Dad lived almost another year. Then one evening he called me into his room. "Brian," he whispered, "there are documents in the drawer. The will is there. I want everything to be fair." "Dad, don't talk like that." He waved a hand. "I'm not stupid, and I don't want Karen to come here when I'm gone and make a circus out of it." I sat by the bed. "She wouldn't dare." Dad exhaled, long, wheezing. "She will. That's why I wrote everything down. And also," he closed his eyes like he was gathering strength, "the stamps. If you have to, sell them. Don't be ashamed. It matters to me that you don't end up in debt because of me." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. 2 months later, he was gone. The funeral was quiet, a small circle of people, a few neighbors, a couple of Dad's old coworkers. I stood by the casket and caught myself thinking something stupid. If Mom were here, she'd know what to say. Karen didn't come. Not to the wake, not to the funeral, not even to say goodbye. But you know when she did come? The day after the funeral? I was sitting in the kitchen with cold coffee and a pile of paperwork, the death certificate, bills, notary documents. The doorbell cut through the silence like a siren. I opened the door and there was Karen. An expensive coat, a neat hairstyle, and that same smile people switch on when they want something. Brian! She opened her arms like we hadn't seen each other yesterday, but 7 years ago. I've missed you so much. How are you holding up? I stood there, not moving. You're late. Her face instantly turned sad. Tickets were insanely expensive, and you know how hard these things are for me. She touched her chest. I'm very empathetic. I just can't handle funerals. I stepped aside and let her into the house. My first mistake. Karen walked down the hallway and looked around like she was assessing real estate. Almost nothing has changed, she said. God, this is so nostalgic. I didn't answer. She sat at the kitchen table, set her purse down like it was her table, and started. Listen, Brian, I don't want to talk legal right now, but I need to ask you for something. My skin went cold. What? She lifted her eyebrows. Dad's stamp collection. My son Trevor got into philately. It's so cute. It would mean so much to him. And you don't need them, right? I stayed quiet. They're just stamps, she smiled wider. A family thing. It'd be right to pass them on to your nephew. I almost opened my mouth to say, fine, because I was exhausted, grieving, and I only wanted peace, but Karen doesn't know how to stop when she senses weakness. She added like it was nothing, and if you don't give them, well, I don't want to, but I'll have to go to court. Because that wouldn't be fair, and I'm sure lawyers would say the same. Something inside me clicked. You're threatening to sue me? I'm saying I have rights. Her voice turned colder. He was my father, too. I stood up slowly. You weren't here when he was dying. Don't start, she snapped. I have my own family. You didn't even come to the funeral. My voice shook. But you showed up for the stamps? Karen pressed her lips together. I came for what belongs to our family. I pointed at the door. Get out. Brian, are you out of your mind? Get out of my house now. She jumped up, eyes flashing. Fine, then I'll see you in court. I closed the door so hard the frames on the wall trembled. That evening, for the first time in a long time, I took out the stamp album. I wanted to just feel Dad close. But when I started turning the pages, another feeling hit me. Anxiety. I'd never valued the collection. To me, it was Dad's thing. But Karen doesn't sue over just stamps. The next day, I went to an appraiser, an older man with a magnifying loupe who talked about perforations, print runs, and cancellations like it was biology. He flipped through a few pages and looked up. Do you know what you have here? No, I said honestly. He gave a low whistle. This is serious, very serious. Some of these stamps are rare. Some are in perfect condition. If I'm being honest, the total estimate could be somewhere around several $100,000. I swallowed. How much? He wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it to me. 500,000. My stomach turned. And then I remembered Dad's words. If you have to, sell them. Because we already had. During his treatment, when the bill started choking us, I sold part of the collection through an auction. I wasn't proud of it, but it paid for his therapy, his medication, the nurse. I kept the receipts, contracts, correspondence, everything. And now Karen hadn't come for something cute for her nephew. She'd come for $500,000. 2 weeks later, I got the papers. Karen filed a lawsuit. She was contesting the will. The accusations were textbook. Undue influence, manipulation. He wasn't of sound mind. I sat in my car outside the post office, shaking with rage. Then I did what people do when they can still think. I hired a lawyer. My lawyer, Mr. Lee, read the complaint, looked up and said, she picked a bad day to play games. Why? He pulled out a copy of the will and tapped a paragraph with his finger. If anyone contests this will, he/she forfeits any and all rights to the estate, including personal belongings, photo albums, furniture, and any family heirlooms that were conditionally left to them. I blinked. Wait, she was supposed to get something? The lawyer nodded. Your father left her a box of family photos, your mother's recipe book, and, he glanced lower, $1. Conditionally, if she didn't contest. My throat tightened. Mom's recipes? Dad knew exactly where to hit Karen morally, not with money, with memory. So if she sues, I whispered, she loses even that, the lawyer said calmly. And honestly, judges respect clauses like this. It's called a no contest clause. Not a guarantee, but a very strong card. I exhaled. Good, we fight. Then came depositions, paperwork, requests. Karen suddenly became a martyr. She called and left voicemails. Brian, you know I love Dad. I just couldn't come. You have no right to do this to me. I didn't respond. Then she texted something my lawyer practically wanted to print on a billboard. If you're smart, you'll give me the stamps without court, because court will cost you more. Funny, right? On the day of court, Karen arrived with her attorney and the look of someone who was already celebrating. She even smiled at me in the hallway. Oh, hi, she said in a sugary voice. You can still settle this like a normal person. I looked her in the eyes. You could have settled things like a normal person 7 years ago when Dad was alive. Her smile vanished. Don't be dramatic. And we walked into the courtroom. The judge was a woman around 50 with the kind of look that instantly says, I've seen hundreds of Karens like you. The judge looked at my sister. Miss Karen, when was the last time you visited your father? Karen sighed theatrically. I was busy with my family, but I called. I supported him emotionally. I asked about visits, the judge repeated dryly. A pause. Maybe 5 years ago, Karen muttered. I heard someone in the room quietly exhale. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, we have a care log, invoices for the nurse, treatment records, and, he paused, proof of sale of part of the stamp collection to pay for chemotherapy. Karen snapped her head toward me. What? My lawyer handed documents to the judge, then to Karen's attorney. The collection's already been partially liquidated. The proceeds were used for the deceased's treatment. Karen shot to her feet. You had no right. That's family. And that's when I couldn't hold it in. I stood up and said, staring straight at her, those stamps already paid for his chemotherapy. Where were you? The room went silent. Karen opened her mouth and couldn't say a single thing. The judge struck the gavel. Quiet! Continue. Then my lawyer played the last card. Your Honor, we also draw attention to the will's no contest clause. The judge read it carefully, looked up at Karen, and said a sentence that seemed to age my sister 10 years in 1 second. Miss Karen, do you understand that contesting the will deprives you of even the conditional items left to you? Karen went pale. What items? The judge, without changing her tone, family photos, your mother's recipe book, personal effects, everything. You contested, you forfeited. Karen dropped into her chair like her legs had been taken away. But the sweetest part came next. During the case, Karen's attorney tried to show that she was struggling, that she had no money, that she needed a share of the estate. They even filed a motion to reduce court costs based on her finances. And then my lawyer quietly told me in the hallway, I need a minute, I noticed something. Turns out Karen, in financial documents submitted under oath, claims she had almost no savings, but through requests and statements, something else surfaced, an account she forgot, and regular large deposits. The judge demanded additional documents, tax returns for several years, and that's when Karen started to panic for real. Her attorney even asked for a recess. In the hallway, I heard them arguing, not the exact words, but the meaning was crystal clear. Karen, you didn't tell me about this money. Doesn't matter. It matters because it's under oath. Then more came out. Her husband had gone bankrupt. There were debts hanging over him, and they'd been hiding assets so creditors couldn't reach them. And there was also a separate inheritance from one of her husband's relatives that they structured specifically to keep it off the radar. The case ended fast. Karen lost, the will stood, the judge ordered her to pay legal costs. And a few months later, Karen got what she feared most, a tax audit, because when you go to court playing, I'm poor, give me, and it turns out you've been hiding assets, it looks very bad on paper. And you know what happens when someone with debts, a bankrupt husband, and fresh penalties has to pay an attorney, court costs, and tax surprises? They sell what they can. Karen sold her house. I found out by accident from a mutual acquaintance who texted me, your sister's moving into an apartment. They say she sold her house after the court. Wild. Half a year later, Karen showed up again, this time without the coat, without the smile. She just stood on the porch, worn out, with empty eyes. Brian, she said quietly, can I at least have the photos? Mom's? I looked at her for a long time. Once I would have broken. Once I would have handed them over because family. But then I remembered Dad gasping at night. I remembered changing his sheets, holding his hand in the hospital, standing alone at his funeral. And I remembered the judge's words. You contested, you forfeited. You chose court, I said calmly. You signed up for this. Karen bit her lip. I didn't know. You knew Dad was dying and you still didn't come, I answered. And when he died, you came for money, not for him. She lowered her eyes. I brought out a box, but not the photos. I handed her a copy of one of Mom's recipes, a photocopy with an ink stain. This is what I can give you, I said, a copy, because it matters to me that Mom's memory doesn't disappear, but the originals stay here. Karen stared at the paper like it was a verdict. You won't forgive me? I answered honestly. I don't hate you. I just won't let you do to me what you did to Dad ever again. And I closed the door. After everything, I did one more thing. I donated part of the stamps that were left to the local museum as a small exhibit about postal history. There was a plaque with my father's name. Not because I wanted to punish Karen even more, but because Dad was right. It wasn't just a collection, it was memory. And Karen tried to turn memory into loot, and she lost. Some people don't mourn their loved ones, they mourn what they can get out of them. For Brian, his dad's stamps were a memory. For her, they were loot. And when she chose court over family, she didn't just lose the inheritance, she lost the right to call herself a daughter and a sister. And our next story. A top performer's petty refusal to help a newbie came back to haunt her when she became the newbie at my workplace. Several years ago, I worked a sales job that I absolutely hated. It wasn't just that sales wasn't my passion, it was the way the company handled training. Or more accurately, didn't handle it at all. I was brand new, fresh out of onboarding, and they gave me maybe half a day of actual instruction. Not half a day per system, half a day total. Here's the software, here's how to log in, here's where the price sheet lives. Good luck, don't screw it up. To make things worse, this wasn't a simple product. There were variations, add-ons, compatibility rules, pricing tiers, and little gotchas that could kill a deal if you said the wrong thing. The company's genius solution to this lack of training was seating new hires next to top performers. The logic was that you'd learn by osmosis. If you got stuck, you could just ask. On paper, that sounds reasonable. In reality, it depended entirely on whether the experienced rep next to you was willing to help. The woman who sat next to me was one of the top sales reps in the department. Everyone knew it. She closed deals like clockwork, hit her numbers early every month, and walked around with that unmistakable confidence of someone who knows they're valuable. Management loved her. She loved reminding everyone how good she was. Technically, helping junior reps wasn't in her job description. That detail will matter in a minute. One day, I finally had a solid prospect on the phone. The call was going well. The customer was engaged, asking smart questions, clearly interested. I could practically feel the sale getting closer. Then they asked a very specific product question, something that boiled down to a simple yes or no, but one that mattered a lot. I froze. I didn't want to guess and tank the deal, so I leaned over and quietly asked her the question. Just a quick confirmation, 5 seconds of her time. She didn't even look at me. She just said flatly, "Sorry, it's not in my job description to help you." I honestly thought she was joking at first. She wasn't. She went right back to typing, completely unbothered. I scrambled to find someone else who might know the answer, but the floor was busy and no one was immediately available. By the time I got confirmation, the prospect had hung up. Sale gone, just like that. I was furious, embarrassed, and honestly pretty disillusioned. Not just with her, but with the whole setup. I realized right then that this company didn't actually care if new reps succeeded. They just wanted numbers. And if you failed, that was on you. Not long after that, I left the company, found a much better role, better culture, real training, and eventually built a solid career. I've been with my current company for nearly a decade now. I'm established, respected, and very comfortable in my role. Fast forward to last week. We got a new sales rep on our team. Guess who it is? Yep, same woman, same name, same voice, same attitude. She recognized me immediately, too. There was a brief moment of awkward eye contact that told me she remembered exactly who I was. A few minutes ago, this is the best part, she leaned over and asked me a product-related question. Same situation as before. She was on a call, clearly stuck, clearly about to lose a sale if she didn't get a quick answer. I didn't even hesitate. I smiled, a big, slow, very satisfied smile. Then I said, "Sorry, it's not in my job description to help you." The look on her face was priceless. Absolute disbelief, followed by recognition, followed by pure frustration. And just like years ago, the prospect on her line hung up before she could recover. Justice. Beautiful, petty, perfectly timed justice. Will my boss probably talk to me about it later? Yeah, almost definitely. Do I care? Not even a little. Some lessons take years to come full circle. This one was worth the wait. Honestly, this says more about her than you. If she'd grown at all, that moment wouldn't have happened the same way. She would have remembered. She would have been careful. Instead, she walked straight into the exact situation she created, expecting a different outcome. That's the part that's almost funny. People forget how they treat others when they're ahead, but those memories tend to stick on the other side. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.